My name is Dr. Danielle Chine. I'm from Carnegie Mellon University in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and I have my team as well, all listed here. The title of my talk is Scenario-Based Training and On-the-Job Support for Equitable Mentoring. We use the term mentoring in replacement of tutoring, like you would think of academic tutoring. Oops, sorry. The academic mentoring and tutoring is delivered through what's called the Personalized Learning Squared PD platform. It's designed to improve efficiency and workplace training for mentors or tutors. It's through scenario-based instruction and personalized support by combining research-driven mentor training using artificial intelligence-powered software. PL2, as we call it, connects tutors or mentors, which are often we'll call undertrained tutors, being in that many tutors don't have the ability or the experience providing supports related to social emotional learning or motivation. They're purely academic in nature oftentimes and lack training in those skills. So the purpose of PL2 is to provide skills like that at the click of a button. PL2 is in partnership with the Center for Urban Education at the University of Pittsburgh, LearnLab at CMU, and Remake Learning. So the vision of PL2 is to bridge this opportunity gap in math. We provide supports when it comes to math tutoring, although we do expand into literacy and other areas as well. The goal and mission is to double the learning gains for students. So by providing this customized mentor support via the continuous on-the-job scenario-based training, and not only math content, but also that social, emotional, and motivational teaching. So the problem, the lack of tutoring and the increased need of tutoring in the form of academic mentoring is needed now more than ever. And I think post-COVID, which I know some speakers before me have talked about, that we've seen a lot of obstacles in improving student learning outcomes in math, particularly with middle school, which is our core demographic. We need trained mentors and tutors, needed more than ever now. We see a lower level of experience among our current mentors and tutors, with just less people in the workforce in general to pull from. There's an increased achievement gap among marginalized students, marginalized being minority students, students of color, students lacking opportunity, students from low-income communities. There's a wider diversity of need among our students. More students need social emotional support in addition to math content. And then there's an influx of students needing that academic mentoring, as you will, piece. So to combat that, PL2 is challenging all of these obstacles and attending to that in their work. Some things I'm going to talk about today are the key features of the PL2 system, and then recent research results determining the most effective competencies for successful mentorship. And then in response to this data on what makes a successful tutor, we have created asynchronous scenario-based lessons that are housed within PL2 for on-demand mentor training. So a mentor or a tutor could log in and instantly take these scenario-based trainings. They're very short cycle, in less than 15 minutes, and complete lessons on lessons that are personalized to their needs. So PL2 features several key components. One is the resource library. This gives mentors access to the resource assistant, which allows them to pin resources for easy retrieval, to create their own resources. Mentors can also give feedback and input into the system using a make a reflection feature and participate in these lessons by clicking the lessons tab. So that's a lot to say within one slide, but the resource library, when we mean resources, a mentor or a tutor could look up different resources based off of what the needs are of the student. For example, if a student is really struggling with engagement, they're not very motivated, they don't want to be there, all of those things, a mentor could look up, engagement, social emotional learning, and find resources to help them tutor the student, or even find resources that are directly for the student, such as a motivational video or activities they can do together to build their engagement and such of things like that. The Make a Reflection feature allows the tutor to, at the end of a tutoring session, they will input data into the system, such as how the session went, an overall rating, the strengths of the student, things the students might need to work on. And then the system will use that data to create personalized recommended supports for the student. Student statuses is a feature where the moment a mentor or a tutor logs into PL2, they'll see the platform, which will have all of their students indicated by a card. And this card indicates what their status is. So you see this, what I call the rainbow donut. So a student, let's say Aiden, is red, meaning missed you. That means that student hasn't been completing their ed tech lessons in math. The ed tech could be like an Inventum or Alexia or Mathia or any type of math software that is linked to the PL2 system. So upon first logging in, mentors immediately will see all of their students and their current status. PL2 also features student data reports. This is a very easy way to see trend data with their tutors. Oftentimes, tutors in a school environment or in any type of after-school program with the AmeriCorps, Boys and Girls Club, any nonprofits, oftentimes mentors and tutors don't have direct access to the student ed tech data. They don't have accounts through the school or anything like that. This allows them to see student ed tech progress, as well as students' progress toward their effort goals. So a mentor and a tutor or a student can sit down and talk about their goals in terms of how many minutes they're going to work on their ed tech, or how many lessons they're going to complete, the accuracy and their achievement in those lessons. So this will generate reports based off of, every week, how many minutes they've been on, their accuracy, their many different types of measurements based off of the ed tech that's being used. We have documented results using what we call the PL2 approach to tutoring, which is this, yes, we're using a math ed tech software, but then we're also providing recommended resources based off of information from the ed tech, the tutor input, as well as these personalized lessons for tutors, and calling this the PL2 approach. And we have recent results from this past year of the Ready to Learn program, which was an after-school summer math mentoring initiative offered by the Center for Urban Education at the University of Pittsburgh. They blended tutors and technology to create an engaging learning experience for students. One thing to note is the tutors within the Ready to Learn program were all the University of Pittsburgh undergraduate students. And you see the picture there on the right, which shows this mentoring system where there's two students that are on their laptops using the ed tech. And then there's 3 or 4 that are working with a tutor, an undergrad student. In this case, she's the woman in the yellow sweatshirt, and providing this personalized tutoring. So the Ready to Learn session format using that PL2 approach combines both the direct mentoring in the in-person format, or virtual, it's 2-to-1 students to mentor. They work on their ed tech. In the case of Ready to Learn, it was Mathia when they were online. And, in the beginning, they do food and fellowship. At the end, they do this reflection and team building, really attending to students' social emotional health. And looking at the data for pre and post to determine students' learning gains as being part of the Ready to Learn program compared to the control group, which were students also part of the same school system, which were not participating in the after-school math mentoring. We did some data analysis. And the pre is students' RIT score reported by the NWEA MAP assessment, along with the post. So pre was fall and winter of 2019, 2020. And again, we got the pre-MAP scores for both students in Ready to Learn and students that were not participating that were part of the school as well. So it was across 3 schools. And then in between, it was the Ready to Learn PL2 approach for our treatment students. And then usual schooling and pandemic for all. If you'll look at those dates, the study fell during the COVID closing of schools. And then the post assessment was NWA MAP fall and winter RIT scores. And this was across 3 local urban schools, local to Carnegie Mellon in Pittsburgh. The grades of the students were mostly 6th and 7th, mostly 1-to-1 male, female. And it was quite a diverse group of students with approximately 80% of them Black, 8 brown, and then 12% white. We did propensity score matching, matching students in demographics and baseline RIT scores. And with our 70 treatment students, we had 380 matched control. And what we found is that students that participated in the Ready to Learn program nearly doubled the rate of math learning compared to the control students who did not participate in the Ready to Learn program. So the 6.8 that you see, which is the blue bar, are the Ready to Learn students. The control group were those at the 3 schools that matched them with propensity score matching at 3.6. The interesting thing is the average annual gain nationally, as reported by NWA MAP, was 5.5. That number is not corrected for the COVID slide. It's using data and norms from many years prior to COVID to generate what an average annual gain would be. So in reality, this 5.5 is probably much lower when we look at actual values post-COVID in learning gains. So the Ready to Learn program has shown significant gains in students' learning of math. The effect size was also moderate at 0.4. And these results were recently published at AIED, which will occur in the UK next month. And it was accepted as a full paper. So the second thing we also have done with PL2 is looking at mentor competencies, meaning what are the key skills successful tutors have to have. And we collected some qualitative data on this, as well as the number of resources we have available to tutors for each of these competencies. Because if some of these competencies are considered very valued, very needed, we better have a lot of resources for mentors and tutors within the PL2 system. So we went ahead and created, based off of looking into plenty of research and both external research that's already been conducted and then internal research within our own systems, and it kind of found 5 competency areas, and we're calling them SMART competencies, indicated by the colors: social, emotional, knowing of math content, advocacy, relationship building, and then technology. And we narrowed it down to 14 key competencies that mentors or tutors need to have. And you can see them listed here. We had a variety of stakeholders, as well as tutors themselves, and some university undergrad and graduate students that have been involved in tutoring, and they rated what skills they thought were most important to mentorship. So it was a 1 to 4 Likert-like scale, and we found that demonstrating awareness of bias is an important skill for tutors, and they rated it at 3.5, up there with building relationships with students, and then engaging and motivating students rated the highest at 3.7. One thing to keep in mind, the 3.5 for demonstrating awareness of biases as an important skill for mentors was found to be very important by tutor supervisors, educational administrators, those in leadership roles, but it wasn't found to be as important according to the tutors themselves. So that's kind of interesting to note in itself. And we're looking deeper into this. And then the second parenthesis is the number of resources within PL2 attending to each of these competencies. So you see, with our demonstrating awareness of biases, we at the time didn't have any resources for mentors regarding that, even though it scored very high in terms of need. And then oppositely, like content understanding, automatically when we think of tutoring, we think tutors need to really know math. If you're going to tutor math, you really, really need to know it. And although that's important, you will find it's not rated as high when it comes to maybe building relationships, engaging students, oftentimes takes more priority. So the SMART framework was based off of CMU's research in-house, and we have the 14 competencies across the 5 strategic areas, the SMART framework. And from this, we found, okay, so we have certain competencies that we have no resources for, such as biases or practicing self-care. And in addition, we see there's competencies that are rated very high of being in need, but there's no training out there for tutors on things like this. Where can you find mentor and tutor training related to demonstrating awareness of biases, ensuring that you have high expectations for all students? There's very little out there. So we started creating our own. We created short asynchronous lessons, approximately 7 to 12 minutes for a tutor or a mentor to complete. Some examples of those we started with that are already created are supporting a growth mindset, using intrinsic and extrinsic motivation strategies, and how to react to students making an error. These PL2 asynchronous lessons are scenario-based. They apply a learn by doing approach, and they're research driven. So every lesson is backed by research that has been done and used as a guide for the lesson. So an example of, this is the first one that was put into the PL2 system, is how to react to a student when they make an error. Because a common error by tutors is to immediately say, oh, you're wrong, that's wrong, you need to fix it, right? And maybe the research says that that's not best practice. So how do we teach a tutor that? Well, we do it through walking them through different scenarios. So this is a segment of how to react to a student making an error that's showcasing the initial training scenario, asking mentors to predict or choose how they would respond to a given scenario while attending to a student's self-efficacy, attending to the belief that a student can learn and the student's own belief that they can learn. So here's an example of a student named Aaron. He has a long history struggling with math. He's trying to add this 3-digit and 2-digit number, and he makes a common mistake. So upon looking at that, briefly explain how you would approach Aaron. What are you going to say to Aaron? How are you going to approach this? This is based off of research that many tutors will immediately say, oh, you forgot to carry the 1, which is language, that the tutor or, the student might not understand what carry the 1 means, because many students are not learning math in the way that others have, or they might go in a different direction. So this training attends to that. So a tutor will briefly explain in their own words what they will do. And then the second question is a selected response or a multiple choice, having them choose which way to respond is the best. And the third question is, why do you think that approach that you selected will best promote Aaron's self-efficacy or belief that he can learn? The reason why we do this approach of where you have an open response, give it to me in your own words, and then they choose a multiple choice and explain why, is to, number one, the open response questions are giving us data on common misconceptions. So these initial lessons are kind of being treated as a pilot to generate data for better creation of multiple choice or selected response. So upon going through the open response of what they would do, choosing the best selected response and saying why, then we go ahead and we tell them the research recommended approach for how to respond to error and making an error. And then we ask, why do you think experts think that this is the best way? We're attending here to cognitive dissonance. Does the tutor understand? And what are their thought processes for that? So these asynchronous lessons, initially housed within PL2, are really helping us not only with the learning engineering of how tutors learn, and we've written some papers on these scenario-based trainings, which, by the way, have occurred in medicine, in clinical areas such as nursing. Many doctors are trained with simulations and scenario-based training, and even teachers now are segueing into this space. So in tutoring, this only makes sense. So in response to our research on mentoring competencies, we have other lessons that we're currently creating and putting in PL2. Number one, the demonstrating awareness of biases. That is something across the board, across all our data that we need to get a move on. Using culturally responsive teaching practices in the tutoring space. What does that look like? What type of scenarios can tutors practice using our lessons to attend to that? And then the demonstration of content understanding as well. So in conclusion, in response to the problems that I've discussed in tutoring, a lack of tutors, a lack of experience across tutors and mentors, a lack of resources out there attending to student self-efficacy in tutoring, we've developed a three-pronged approach in PL2. And we call these three-pronged solutions, if you will, for tutoring organizations and schools. The first one is PL2 training. Those are the asynchronous lessons, and then we also provide synchronous live lessons to organizations and schools. Second is the toolkit. That is the use of the ed tech in addition to personalized supports based off of AI and tutor inputs. And then lastly, we created our own tutoring core. So now we're training tutors ourselves, recruiting them ourselves, and then deploying them where needed within organizations and schools. So the PL2 training is access to over 100 plus high quality resources for tutors and students, access to the asynchronous lessons, and those were currently being created in-house. And then tutors can also find their own resources and use the resource assistant, where they go through and ask and answer a series of questions, and then the PL2 system will recommend the most appropriate supports. So they'll go through and ask questions like, is your student struggling with the math content or a math problem in particular? Is your student having a hard time sitting still? Is your student, establishing a low self-esteem and saying they can't do this, and, all the symptoms of maybe a fixed mindset? So it'll go through all these questions and help the tutor figure out kind of the root cause of a student's obstacles in their learning. The toolkit repackages the student ed tech status features. They use the goal setting feature, recommended resources, allowing the mentors to personalize the learning experience for students. So this would be examples of using that resource assistant, where it will ask you, do you want to identify the root cause behind a challenge a student or mentee is facing, or do you already know the root cause and you want to go through resources and find them yourselves? And it will go through that process with you. The tutoring core, like I said, is highly trained, certified, and cleared tutors ready for deployment in your organization. They're trained on social, emotional, and motivational strategies, pedagogy and content knowledge, that demonstrating awareness of biases, building relationships with students and their caregivers, and then the use of PL2 and other technology tools to assist them. So for future work within PL2, we're going to survey more partners in differing roles to determine their perspectives to answer the following research questions. what differences exist among mentors' perceptions of learning and their demographics, and also self-reported level of experience. In all of our asynchronous lessons, we asked, it's optional, but we collect demographic information, as well as we have them rate their tutoring experience. And then we get the pre and post learning gains built within the lessons as well. So as you would guess, there's quite a few research questions that we can answer from all of this. For example, do mentors reporting a high level of experience perform better? Our preliminary data regarding tutoring self-rated experience and performance in our asynchronous lessons is interesting in that you would hypothesize that tutors that rate themselves very experienced and skilled don't necessarily perform well on scenario-based assessments attending to some of these things we've talked about. So why would that be? We're currently looking into it. Do mentors learn new mentoring skills from these short scenario-based lessons? That's a very summative research question in that, are they learning from doing these short scenario-based lessons? And we're looking into that with preliminary results yielding to yes. Functionality advances such as the student-facing version allow students to directly access resources, monitor their own goals, and directly message mentors. So a recent version upgrade has a student-facing version. So when a student goes into PL2, they can see their ed tech data. They can also see any recommended resources that have been assigned to them by their tutor. A very easy example would be a student that has a very defeated mindset. He just doesn't, he shuts down quickly. The minute he doesn't understand something, he wants to quit. And he really loves sports. So the mentor or tutor recommended a short video on Michael Jordan and how Michael Jordan missed more shots than he made in his career and he never quit, to really reach that student. It's a very simple example, but it's something that's personalized for the student. And that's all I have regarding PL2. We are currently a work in progress, constantly optimizing PL2 to make it the best it could be for our mentors, tutors, and students. If you have more information, you can, or have any questions, you could reach out to myself or our project manager, Shiv Gupta, and our emails are put there. Does anyone have any questions or comments?
Hi, Professor. Thank you for your speech. It's really nice. And I don't think we have any question for our audience. And thanks again for your nice presentation. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. It was a joy being here, and everyone have a wonderful day.